Hey everybody, it's your boy GARDNSOUND. How y'all doing? Today we're going to be taking a look at the Ableton Push 2. And this isn't going to be the traditional type of review that you see everybody doing on... You know what I just realized? I should absolutely color these, the GARDNSOUND colors. Yeah, that's better. I'm not going to be doing the traditional kind of review that everybody does on hardware devices where I tell you like what it's made out of, like how it's built, what are all the fucking features and stuff. Like I don't really have the patience to sit down and rehash all of that somebody else has done better. If you want to see a review video about the performance and features and that sort of thing on the Ableton Push 2, go watch like Sonic State's video on it or something like that. What I'm going to be doing today is talking about how I've had this particular instrument, which was provided to me by Ableton. They didn't exchange any money with me, so I can't really say it's a sponsored video. However, they did provide this copy of the Push 2 for me to review about a year ago. And I have been procrastinating, I will not lie, but it's kind of a beneficial procrastination because now I've had an entire year to mess with this particular device, and I have one or two, maybe three ways that I use it that I think it's actually really beneficial, and I want to talk about it a bit. So I will do a little bit of a review about the actual device itself. This thing is well built. It feels sturdy. It does not feel like the typical controller. I've messed with the APC-40. I've messed with the Novation Launchpad. I've messed with that sort of thing. It is not that. It is not plastic at all. Everything feels very tactile, very metal, very tactile. Everything's tactilely pleasing. Tactily pleasing? I don't know. It feels good to the hands. All of the buttons are very sensitive, and they've got a nice amount of velocity to them, like an MPC would. So you got the little... And then you can really mash it. You can get some expressive stuff out of it. You can get soft with it. Or loud. Yeah. Got a mod wheel. Feels nice. It can be used for pitch bend. We got a beautiful display up here that is in as many colors as you see featured in the RGB pads. And you can control parameters for all of Ableton's instruments right from the controller. More reverb, more attack, less reverb. Yeah, it's pretty dope. You can change the scale to like, G, D maybe. That sounds nice. All sorts of different scale options. You can set the thing to in key or chromatic, so now there's no wrong notes if you want to put it on dummy mode. I like it on chromatic though, so I can get those nice blue tones. Anyway, so that is the brief overview of the actual controller. All the buttons make sense, the layout makes sense, and you got to spend about, I'd say, 2 months with it before you really understand where all the functions are. Some things are hidden. Some of these buttons, as you can see, they don't light up until you do certain things. Which is at times confusing. So if you're looking for the quantize options, or if you're looking for getting down into a clip view, you'd have to hit the note view or the session view, and then see you're starting to get the different things that are lighting up here. So it is confusing if you're not familiar with this type of device. There are multifunction knobs, multifunction buttons. The entire thing is multifunction, and I believe that's the point. I also think that's its biggest weakness, but we can talk more about that at length later. What I want to do is show you the way I use this, and it's basically twofold. When I'm using the Push, I'm normally kind of doing my hybrid thing where I have a track that I'm working on, and I'm importing some noise from my rack, or I'm editing in Ableton. I'm very much of what people have referred to as a hacker when it comes to Ableton. I'm very mouse and keyboard. Things are certainly quicker for me to do with the mouse and keyboard. I know my keyboard shortcuts like the back of my hand. That's just the type of composer and producer that I am. However, I do think that the Push adds something. I definitely use it every time I make a song. But the way I use it isn't typical. I'm not going into the drum sequencer. I'm not getting the 808 module out and slapping it on the track and then getting the drum sequencer out. I'm not doing that with the Push because, in my opinion, that's slow. I'd rather type it in using my mouse and keyboard. That way I can use Control-D, Control-C, Control-V, and just quickly lay things out. I do think it is faster in terms of production to learn the keyboard shortcuts. Ableton Push 2 doesn't make me any faster. What it does make me is a bit more creative. So let me take a look at this particular arpeggiator and show you what I'm talking about. So what I'm doing right now is I'm sending MIDI out to my rack, which everybody's seen in other videos. And I'm going to use the arpeggiator function inside of the push in order to play around with the sound. So I'm going to go in here and create a clip using my mouse and keyboard, and I'm just going to put on like a D or something, and just launch this under loop and mess with the synthesizer a bit. Okay, that was all just messing with the synth, but what the push allows me to do is mess with the arpeggiator as if it was a hardware instrument. There's nothing worse than going back and forth between hardware and software, having to take my mind out of the fact that I was just touching knobs over there on the rack, and now I have to touch knobs here, and that's much better of a transition than having to go from the knobs to my mouse and keyboard. Let me show you. All right, so I liked those notes a lot, so let's go ahead and add those in here. Yep, so that's what I would do. And then at this point, I would get a track out. That's just audio. And I would say external in, and I'd go 3/4, which is where it's coming in from. And I would just record this guy. Then see, I'm already like onto a track, and I believe that delay in getting to the computer actually makes the thing more creative as a thing. Yep, you're welcome. That was a fully formed sentence, and that's exactly what I meant with it. Here we go. Boy, see now actually I want to write, and I believe that's what the push does. It keeps me from like getting stuck in the computer, and now I'm like in the mood to write. You know what I'm saying? Yep, too fast. Yeah, so I believe that's the benefit of having the push, is it doesn't take me out of the creative headspace of touching knobs. I get a lot of creative juices flowing when I'm actually messing with something with my hands, and I think this is able to add that to my hybrid setup. That is example one. So we have out to rack using the arpeggiator function. We've got the actual arpeggiator coming in, and then we've got, things just kind of flow in that way. And that's what it is. It's a project starter. It's an idea maker. It's an idea inspiration machine. That's kind of how I use it. Let's for a second pivot. Here's the other way that I use the push. So this is my Garden Mouse synthesizer, which you guys have definitely seen me use before. And again, this is what I'm talking about when I mean that it's a creative machine. So like, check it out. Let's add to this. I'm going to say that the compressor's sidechain needs to come from the kick as well. Let's record that. Now see I'm switching to mouse and keyboard because I can do this faster. What I can't do faster is get the sensitive amount of automation that I wanted. And check this out. See, now I just get lost in making a song. The third way I use this instrument is part of my series called Ambiences, where I just make an ambient track using my modular. And I use this to fire clips. And I have an entire video about making that with the performance included. I'll link that down below if you'd like to see how that works. But basically, I write MIDI clips and I fire them off to my synthesizers, able to split it out that way. And this actually helps me perform the songs in the studio. I don't perform them live. I just treat it as a performance and then I record it. Yeah, but that being said, I don't use this as a performance instrument. I'm not taking this to the club with me and performing a live set. What I'm doing with this is staying in the creative headspace. And that's what this instrument allows me to do. It feels like I call it an instrument, and I believe that's its best use case. That's what the Push is to me. It's not a sequencer for me. It's not a performance instrument for me. Like, I'm not taking this to a club and performing with it. I'm not using clip view like that. For me, it's a creation tool for making a song. And it's easier for me to stay creative when I don't have to look at the screen. Like when I can just keep my eyes here. Like you saw me flipping through the compressor and adjusting the output gain, going to the mix page and adjusting the mix. That sort of stuff, like it's better to not have to go from here, my creative space with my rack and my instruments, and here with the Push, to then pivoting all the way over here and having to look back at the computer screen, for me, that sort of takes me out of making music. And what this thing allows me to do is actually make music. It also doesn't hurt that it feels like a great instrument. It's a lot easier for me to play than a piano. I love the different tuning modes. I leave it in fourths because I'm a guitarist, and so that makes a lot of sense to me. The patterns are basically identical with my fingers. So the leap to using this as an instrument really wasn't that big of a jump. That being said, there are some downsides. I think the menu system overall, like getting used to these buttons that have multiple functions where you switch a page, and all of a sudden something has like lights on it and like the words have changed over here and things are just now acting differently. I don't like that. That to me just adds a layer of confusion that's unnecessary. Now I understand that if you tried to boil the entirety of Live down to discrete buttons, you'd have a controller the size of a desk. I understand that. So that's not what I believe, should be the intended goal. I just think that maybe some of these buttons need to be considered their own buttons. Maybe even break them out so it's like a half button and a half button. I wouldn't be mad about that or have a problem with that. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that a button's purpose changes when you change pages or something like that. That is probably my biggest complaint. Some of the smaller complaints that I have are these sometimes these knobs are just way too sensitive. And like what I mean by that is like I barely touch a knob and it'll just like fly up to 10-20% more than what I wanted. So maybe dial that back a bit on your next instrument, Ableton. I think that overall, those are my two biggest complaints. Other than that, I really don't have anything negative to say about it. I wish it was marketed more as a creative powerhouse and less like a feature-laden, glitch box. You know what I'm saying? Is like what I mostly see is people using the drum sequencer, and I don't do that. What I mostly see is people using Ableton's default instruments, and I don't do that. Like what I do is I make instruments using VSTs that are awesome, like Massive or Serum, and then I label them inside of an instrument rack, and I give them knobs and buttons like this, which is awesome, which I'm able to do because the way that it interfaces with the devices. So I can see on my instrument right here, reverb, delay, massive filter, re-release amount, does nothing, and sidechain, exactly like it's set up inside of the instrument rack. And that's great. I love that. But I mean, it does fully integrate with other synthesizers inside of Ableton. I don't use them enough in order to, comment on that, but that's my favorite part, is the fact that it's here. I don't have to look at the screen. I can look here. I also like the fact that it integrates with some of my favorite Max for Live plugins. For instance, if I wanted to bounce this down to audio, I'd either need to duplicate the track and then, freeze and flatten it. But with this plugin that I use called BIP, I can do select record, and it'll start a new track and sample it for me. So that's pretty neat. So there are some plugins that I use a lot that integrate with it really well. At the end of this review video, I'm supposed to send this back to Ableton, and I think this is my biggest praise that I can give the synthesizer. I'm supposed to contact them and say, hey, would you like this back? Thanks for letting me review it. And I'm going to do that, but I really hope they say no, because I want to keep it, because I feel like at this point it's part of my workflow to the point where, I'd kind of feel naked if it was not on my desk. In case in point, I mean, look, I built a stand for it. Like I didn't buy this thing. I built this hardwood stand for it. Not hardwood, excuse me, plywood. I built this plywood stand for it just to make it look cooler on my desk, and I think that's the true mark of how I feel about this thing. Is I like this thing on my desk. I like seeing the cool lights. I like the knobs. I love the screen. I love being able to play it like an instrument. It feels good in my hands, and it does wonders for my modular, and that's all I have to say about it. Is it worth the money? Yeah, I think so. I think in the case that Ableton, if they want me to send it back to them, I'd probably end up purchasing one. Anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. Like I said, this isn't going to be a feature-laden review video like you see on Sonic State. Definitely go check them out if you'd like to see that sort of a thing. But as always, my name is GARDNSOUND, and I'll see you guys next week.